I'm Billy and this is Billy Built. And if you've been watching this channel, you probably like cars, but not just any cars. You more than likely like cars that give you problems. Or maybe you're just here to get some casual advice on your first project car before diving headfirst into it. It can be very daunting at first, or maybe you just don't know where to start. I'm here to hopefully answer some questions for you guys and take care of those initial leaps or fears that many of you may have before jumping into that first purchase.
I'm in danger!
Okay, so my first question is, what's stopping you? You'll never learn anything unless you just start. So the key point here is to just start, but at least have a straight head on your shoulders as to what you're getting into beforehand. The best thing you can do is really just prepare yourself and to gain as much knowledge prior to diving into it before actually just jumping into it. Now, I know that sounds conflicting. You gotta find that happy medium. It's like anything else you do in life. For instance, YouTube. Nobody starts out with 100,000 subscribers. Everyone starts out with 1 subscriber. But you know what? You don't gain 1 subscriber without hitting that little record button on your camera to begin with. So let me be your little bit of reassurance that you may need just to get started, because I can guarantee you it will 100% be worth it in the end. And you're probably wondering, who is this Billy guy and what qualifies him to tell me where I should start for a project car? Well, let me start by saying, well, many people think that I have a problem. I don't necessarily think about it that way, but you know, well, here we are. Now I will say that many of these cars it's not like I buy a new one every year. I have bought 4 cars in the last 15 years of my life, and they're all here with me today. And as you can see behind me, this here is my fully built 300ZX twin turbo and my recently purchased 1987 Toyota Supra. It is a Mark III, it's not the Mark IV, it does not have a 2JZ. And you know what? I kind of like it that way. And people ask me all the time, oh, is that an LS swap?
Absolutely fucking not.
And most people don't know what a VG30 is, and you know what? I kind of like it that way. And that's what I mean by problem cars. They're vehicles that most people look at and tend to stray away from, because honestly, I like having cars that nobody really knows anything about. Don't go buying a car based on the clout that it attracts.
Whoa! Is that a Supra?
Get something that is within your own means, that you are comfortable with working on, that you feel like you would like in the end, but it's also within your budget. Now I know that sounds like a lot and it could be very overwhelming. Stay with me here. Follow me through to the end of the video, because I got a lot of things I'm going to clear up in this video, and we haven't even gotten to point number 1. But before you click off the video, please do me a huge favor and make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. That way you can see me next week when I post my next video, and hopefully by then I'll post something that will benefit you in some way, shape, or form. And of course, don't forget to head over to the website, support your boy. Thank you guys so much for those of you that have already purchased stuff, especially those of you overseas in Australia, even UK. Thank you so much. We got the 300ZX merchandise here. I got some more generic stuff here for those of you that maybe you don't have a 300ZX. This is actually the back of my Built Not Bought shirt. And then we even got women's leggings and license plate frames. Yes, the leggings say Billy Built, but I also have them that say Fair Lady Z. So if you want to get your girl some 300ZX leggings, or maybe you are a girl and you just want some 300ZX leggings, you don't want them to say Billy Built on them, I get it. So head on over, check out the website. Appreciate every single one of you. Let's get back into today's video. But anyways, let's get started with the 5 points that I got for you guys. So starting with number 1, the first thing you need to consider when buying a project car is consider the end goal. Is it going to be a drag car? Is it going to be a street car? Is it going to be a show car? Now, yes, you can kind of combine the 2 or 3 of these even. Ultimately, it's not going to be the best at any one of those. So if you really want to perform and do good at one thing or the other, you really have to set an end goal and stick with it. Now, for instance, this car behind me is my fully built 300ZX. I built this car entirely in my garage right here. You can see all the videos on it. Everything's been done right here. Have I learned how to do everything on this particular car? No. In all honesty, I started with the Honda out there. You know why I started with the Honda? Because the Honda was cheaper, but I'll get to that in another point here. This car was primarily built to, ultimately what I'd like to do is run a high 9 at the quarter mile with a manual transmission. I didn't really care how much power it makes, but in order to make that kind of pass, kind of have to be making 800, 900, possibly even 1,000 horsepower, which is kind of what the car is built for. And then at the same time, I was like, if I'm gonna put all this time and money and effort into making the car go fast, I might as well make it look good. So in doing so, I went ahead and repainted the whole engine bay. As a matter of fact, I actually ended up repainting this whole car. I had zero intention of making this a show car. Does it look good? Some might not think so, but I think it looks pretty good. For being a 300ZX, most people overlook and don't even consider. Honestly, I kind of love it. I mean, you don't even have to put these in any particular order. Like, this is number 2 on my list of things, but it could very easily be number 1 because we're all limited on the budget that we have to spend on cars. I know it sounds crazy. Honestly, sometimes you really have to kind of let the budget go for certain things and just go for it. But at the same time, have a backup plan, please. Perfect example for this video. When I first got into cars, I was at the store with my mother and I was walking down the magazine aisle, and lo and behold, there was a Super Street magazine, and it was a couple years after the Too Fast and Furious era. And what really caught my eye in it is the fact that it said, modify your car on a budget. It was a picture of a blue hatchback EG Civic with red wheels and a big ducktail on the rear hatch of it. That's what I needed. That was the ultimate thing that I needed, because my entire, I don't know, 1 to 2 years prior to this, I've really been into like Need for Speed Underground, Need for Speed Underground 2. I loved all of those games. I loved the Fast and Furious. But you know what? The biggest thing was for me was money, the budget. I didn't even have a job at this time when I picked up this magazine, and I knew my first job would more than likely be minimum wage, making a couple $100s a week. How in the world am I gonna be able to afford a $1,500 turbo on $7 an hour? Just wasn't gonna happen. So I got this magazine and realized very quickly that, hey, it can be done. If this guy can do it, I can do it. I can find a way to do it. Now, some things to consider as far as the budget goes is obviously the initial price of the vehicle. Is the vehicle gonna be running? Is it not gonna be running? Is there gonna be a certain amount of money that you need to spend to get the vehicle up and running? Does it have a good motor? Does it have a blown motor? You know, these are all things that need to be put into consideration when purchasing a project car. Now, the price of the vehicle is just one thing. The other thing you would have to consider is the price of the parts to repair the vehicle or to build the vehicle. Typically, if parts are not as readily available, they will tend to cost more. Or if it's something European or exotic or something that, you know, may not even be made, or they didn't make too many of them, parts are gonna be more expensive. So please consider the rarity of the parts before you get into it, because the rarity of the parts will also determine the price of the parts. And that's not something you want to get into. Like, for instance, if you want to get an Alfa Romeo, more power to you, but good luck finding the parts. At least where I'm at, we do not have those anywhere around. Because let's say maybe in Europe, Alfa Romeos are a dime a dozen and you can get parts for them without any problem, or your neighbor has like 20 of them sitting in their front lot. Good for you, more power to you. Please go right ahead, get yourself the Alfa Romeo. But around here where I'm from, those are not available, and even the newer ones, I tell people to stay far away from because they're nothing but problems.
No, hang on a minute, hang on. How Alfa Romeo is that? You put the door in the wrong place. It should be further back.
Okay guys, obviously, I'm a 300ZX owner here, so number 3, and you gotta expect me to talk about this because this is something that most 300ZX owners learn the hard way, and that is going to be, gotta consider the complexity of the vehicle. The complexity of the vehicle will ultimately determine how easy and simple it is to work on. The 300ZX was my second vehicle that I ever owned, and to be honest, I didn't know anything when I bought it. I actually was not interested in the 300ZX at all. It just kind of ended up in my lap, and you know what? Over the years, I've grown to really love it. And it kind of taught me that whether or not you want a vehicle or not doesn't necessarily mean it's not right for you. You can really end up with something and not be a big fan or know what you're getting into at first, but that lack of knowledge is ultimately what's keeping you from loving the car. Kind of what happened here. So I ended up with the 300ZX, and then after a couple years of driving it, say 30, 40,000 miles of daily in it, I ended up getting the yellow Honda CRX out there. Now the great thing about the CRX is A, it's a Honda, B, there are parts everywhere. They're all over the junkyards. Well, they were years ago when I got that one, and they get great gas mileage. I didn't know much about cars. I learned the hard way. I learned quickly. However, I learned so much from this car and the CRX out there. Most people nowadays just buy a car because it looks good, it has this feature that they like, and that's it. Well, I'm gonna be the first person, probably not the last person, to tell you that when you buy a project car, you really wanna learn about all those little things before you get into it, because let me tell you, not knowing too much about automotive mechanics and getting a 300ZX twin turbo is a really rough way to learn, because now the 300ZX was the very first computer-aided design vehicle that was ever produced, 1989. And believe you and me, they shoved every little thing they could possibly think of into the car. Every little bit of technology they had in 1990 was put in here, and it made the vehicle a complete nightmare for the technicians back then. Nobody wanted to work on it. Kind of turned a lot of people away from them, and well, here we are 20, 30 years later, and there's people like me that love the cars and find ways to make them way better. Here's another thing to consider. You're not gonna find, I mean, you might, I'm sure there are people out there, but you're definitely gonna pay a premium for someone to work on your Audi or BMW versus a Nissan or a Honda, Toyota. Like, I mean, the 7M GTE is a straight 6 motor. The 2JZ is a straight 6 motor. People love the straight inline motors because they're just simple to work on. Certain things just tend to work better and last longer. And well, the 7M may not be the best example of this, but it is a good example of simplicity. Because as far as simplicity goes, I mean, let's think about it. You can have a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, an 8-cylinder. Each time you have a different number of cylinders, there's more components within that motor, which in my eyes, honestly, that's just one more thing that can go wrong. Or in this case, 2 more things that can go wrong. You know, single turbo, twin turbo, like, it gets very complex very quickly. Is it fuel injected? Is it carbureted? Who runs carburetors nowadays? Not too many people, but you know what? They're really easy to work with, and they're very cheap to get, and you can make good power with them. The only thing a carburetor is bad for is fuel efficiency. I mean, ultimately, it boils down to the efficiency of the engine itself, but another video, I'm not talking about that here. Just remember, complexity of the engine, complexity of the vehicle. Is it going to be easier to get a engine harness for a Honda CRX or a 300ZX? Or even example, let's say you want to get a project car where you want to swap the engine in. Would it be easier to put a 2JZ into a 1987 Supra or a 2013 BRZ? 90% of the people that start engine swaps never finish them. So my biggest advice for anyone is to just get a car that you see potential with. It has good potential. You don't need to make 1,000 horsepower out of your street car. You don't need it. It's pointless. You'll never use more than about 700 horsepower. Another thing with the budget is, well, to work on the cars, you obviously need tools. And sometimes certain vehicles require specialty tools. And well, some of these specialty tools can cost $400 and $500 for just a socket or for just a simple wrench. And you know, or maybe they're not even available anymore. Something else to consider. If you have a sunroof that fails on an older BMW, which I feel like that's a very common thing, and it requires a certain tool to remove and replace the sunroof, like, you could be screwed. Or you're gonna end up paying $1,000 upcharge on a tool that you may only use one time off of eBay. It's just one of those things, so look ahead as much as you can. Now, talking about the price of the tools to get into whatever project car you need, my biggest advice for getting tools, for getting started on anything automotive, go to Harbor Freight, get yourself like a 250, 300 piece kit. It'll come with all the ratchets, and nowadays, the Harbor Freight ratchets are pretty freaking good. I'm not gonna lie, I've got all Snap-on stuff, but you know what? I also work on cars for a living. These tools made me my money. After you do that, if you have money to spare, these things will save your life. Electric ratchets and at least 1 3/8 or 1/2 inch impact. Medium duty. I say 1/2 inch because the 1/2 inch medium impact can be very versatile, but so can a 3/8. For instance, this is my little stubby 1/2 inch. I use this to take off wheels sometimes. almost all the time. It's very short, very stubby, but it's a 1/2 inch. It can be a little big and bulky sometimes. Best electric tool you guys can get for the money is this right here. You will save so much time, and if you don't get one right off the get-go, you will be questioning yourself for the rest of your life why you didn't get one sooner than that. Okay, so moving on to the 5th and final thing for this video, and I've kind of touched on it here and there because, in all honesty, many of these points kind of cross into one another. You know what I'm saying? The 5th and final thing is going to be the availability of parts. Now, availability of parts you heard me talk about in the budget, and you know, it could also go into the complexity of the vehicle, because if there are a lot of moving parts in a vehicle, that means the more parts that you're going to have to source to fix it and get it back up to square one. Let's look at it like this. The 300ZX has a lot of parts that are no longer available. The Honda, I can swap parts in left and right all day long from vehicles from 1987 all the way up to 2024. That's like 30 years of engine parts that are swappable in that car. Very easily, very, very easily. And the best thing about the Honda is it's so simple to work on. Everything is a direct swap in. There are parts readily available off the shelf, ready to go at any given moment. I mean, perfect example, you can look at the K series nowadays. In my opinion, the K series is the LS swap of today. Yes, it's missing 4 cylinders, but my God, they're putting K series swaps in just about everything. One more reason why I have the motor that I do in my CRX, because the CRX still has a B series in it. It's not a K series, it's nothing crazy. It is a simple B20 with a Type R head. It's nothing crazy at all, you guys. But you know what? I opened the hood and yeah, many people might either think, oh, that's a stock car. Look, it's still on the stock wheels. You never know. It's the little things that people will say, oh wow, I never would have guessed that. Or, you know, that's the stuff that I really like. Opening the hood on my 300ZX and showing people this, I'm very proud of it. But you know what? At the end of the day, I have parts in this car that are no longer available. And I had just purchased them like 2-3 years ago. So it's just, are they replaceable with other parts? Yes. But things like that intake manifold, I don't know if they'll ever be available again. Not in bulk, not by the same person. Maybe he'll do another run of them. Who really knows? And you might ask, Billy, why did you pick a Subaru for your daily driver? Well, to be honest, it is a Toyota Subaru combination, and if you can keep from modifying a Subaru, it'll be just as reliable as just about any Toyota out there. Big facts. I don't care if you think I'm wrong, because I know I'm right. I think the best example for as far as availability of parts go is nothing that I have here, because it's gonna be the LS motor. You can literally go to any auto parts store and pick up just about anything for an LS. Not that I'm speaking from experience, it's just, I mean, think about it. They're literally everywhere. They're still used in vehicles today. Many of the parts are the same. I hate to admit it, you know, I'm really not a big advocate for the LS Swap the World, but those motors are probably some of the easiest to work on, easiest to make power with, and they are definitely the easiest to get parts for, because, well, they will forever be making parts for those motors, at least for the next 40 years, because there's so many available and there's so many people still doing stuff with them. Just to add to this, as a good example of something that's just been, well, overran and over-scavenged, and that is the Volkswagen Bug, the Volkswagen Beetle from the 60s, the 70s. Those cars were so popular back then, and all the parts that were once widely available are just no longer made. They're hard to find. There's only a few people that build those motors, and you really have to know what you're getting into, and 90% of the engines that you get now will have to be rebuilt in one way or another. It's just one example of vehicles that were once popular that are just impossible to find parts for or impossible to repair. And the prices of those old Volkswagen Beetles have just skyrocketed. At the end of this, you might be thinking, well, Billy, you kind of narrowed out everything that I ever thought of as an option. What would you actually suggest for a project car for somebody just starting out? And to be honest, I would recommend either a Honda. If you want something very simple, 4-cylinder, readily available parts, get yourself a 2006 to 2010 Civic SI. Don't expect it to be very fast. If you want to eventually add a turbo onto it, You can. It's there. The engines will take it. You don't have to worry about building the engine anytime soon. The engines are plenty capable of 500 horsepower in stock form. Another option, get yourself an old LS. I mean, I am not a big fan of LS cars, but if you want something that's readily available, capable of making a lot of power, and just something that, you know, you want to wrench on, or maybe you don't even want to go turbo. Maybe you want to keep it naturally aspirated. There are plenty of off-the-shelf, even factory parts from LS motors that are interchangeable that you can make 500-600 horsepower on, just the naturally aspirated engine. I have heard lately that the GTOs have come down drastically in price, and they are actually very affordable cars to get into if you're looking to just buy something to start or tinker on the weekends. It's just like I said in the beginning of this video, you never learn anything if you don't start. Oh, but let's say you want to get something that's naturally aspirated, or something that's already turboed from the factory, and all you want to do is turn the boost up, or you want an 80s or 90s gem. To be honest, these two cars you can get for right around $10,000 now, in pretty decent shape that will only need a few minor things. Don't expect to get a perfect one at $10,000. You'd be very hard pressed to find one for $10,000 now, but I've seen them, they're out there, it is possible. Perfect example, these cars are out there. You can find them for less than $7,000, $8,000, and they're still running really good. This car runs phenomenally. I can hop in it right now, turn the key, it'll fire up, and I'll go drive 10, 20 miles up the road. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this video, you guys. If this helped you in any way, or this was just the final kick and push you need to go out and buy your project car, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Follow along. I'm still building these cars. We're not done yet. As long as you have a project car, it is never truly finished. But I hope you guys like this one. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace out.